Stimulation is one of the most important things we can talk about, because what we're talking about with stimulation is something called false fire. It's not the real energy that humans should be functioning with and flowing with. It is something that is a mimic of it. It tries to mimic. It's artificial energy. So we look for stimulation when we don't have our own natural energy. So we need to go outside of ourselves to put something into ourselves that's going to give us a sense of a buzz. But that buzz that we try to put into ourselves is not the same as the buzz, the hum, the innate energy that comes from within. So it's a false energy, which means it's actually going to wind up draining our true energy, and it's going to leave us even more depleted naturally than we were even before we took it. Which is why with stimulation and addiction are basically cousins of each other, or brothers, because the more we need external stimulation, the more we take in external stimulation, the more of it we will need, because the same amount that we took the day before isn't going to give us the buzz. We have to look for more the next day. That's why there's going to be more sugar taken in, more starch. People are eating more and more and more and more when they're taking in the stimulants. They need more coffee. They start out with a cup of coffee, and suddenly they're drinking 3 cups of coffee a day. If it's cigarettes, same thing. If it's the pills that they're needing to give them some sort of buzz, some sort of stimulation. So stimulation is actually a really dangerous road. It may seem, and actually it's funny because most people will say, well, I can't even start my day without my cup of coffee. That is a red flag. That is not the kind of life you want to be living. Most people say, oh, I don't really have a good time when I'm out until I've had a couple of beers, or until I've had my glass of wine. Where's my glass of wine? It's 6 p.m., where's my glass of wine? You wouldn't believe how many people live that way. Same thing with, I can get through the afternoon if I have my cookie, or there's cookies in the office. Oh, finally we'll get a little burst of energy. Or you give kids the stimulation of the cakes and the sweets. Basically, if everyone could take an inventory of their intake of stimulants, they would probably be very shocked, and they would get a really great sense of where they're lacking in that energy, which should be coming from them naturally, where that's lacking. They'll get a great sense of that, and they'll get a great sense of how addicted they are to these substances. And when they take that sort of inventory, when someone actually walks through their day and recapitulates everything they take in on a daily or weekly basis that is a stimulant, which is anything that has this false fire component, anything that will give them a buzz or that they feel dependent upon. Anything that is acidic is also a stimulant. Anything that is acidic is also addictive. So acidity, stimulant, and addictive nature, those 3 things go together. Addiction, stimulation, and acidity. The degree to which something is addictive is the degree to which it's acidic. The degree to which something is acidic is the degree to which it's going to be addictive, is the degree to which it is overstimulating, or to which it will stimulate externally, give you an external buzz. So you can really walk through these things and see the degree which you are addicted to external stimulation, and thereby putting acidic substances into your body. And then you want to turn it around. You want to look at it very clearly, be super honest with it. They say you can lie to everybody else, but never lie to yourself. Don't lie to everybody else, true as well, but definitely don't lie to yourself. Be honest, look at it as it is, and get real, because it's the more stimulation you're putting in, the more you're actually leaching your own innate natural resources. And you don't get those back without a lot of effort, without getting over the stimulation, without getting over the addiction, without getting over that which compels you to take in these acidic substances. They are not your friend. You think they're your friend. You think it's cute. You think it's fun to say, oh, I need to have my drink. Oh, I need to have my coffee. Oh, I need to have my sugar, my donut, my cigarette, my happy pill. It's not. It's not cute at all. It's not fun. It's not, and the other thing is that people will often feel like they're included in a kind of an unspoken group when they do these things. Oh yeah, I need my cup of coffee. So you go and you have, there's all these gatherings that take place around stimulants. You don't have gatherings. I mean, yes, people get together to meditate and do yoga, and that's great, and that's wonderful. But what do they do before and after? And There's so few people who are living without external stimulation. But this gathering around it is actually really kind of scary, because as humans, we're constantly looking for a feeling of inclusion. Even though our society acts so much on exclusivity, the human heart deeply desires inclusivity. And we want to be accepted. We want to be included. We don't want to be, expelled from the tribe. We want to be brought into the tribe. And so anything that will validate that sense of being accepted and included will give us a burst of serotonin and possibly endorphins as well, and this and that will continue to drive us for that thing. Kind of like the mouse will be if it does its little trick or whatever it's supposed to do, it will be given this thing, so it keeps on doing it, not necessarily because it's conscious of why it's doing it. It's just getting that hormone release that reminds it that things are okay. And in a world where things are, if we were completely conscious of what was actually going on, or if we really paid attention, if we are paying attention, we know that things are not okay. So anything that gives us even the remotest sense that things are okay, that little bit of peace and stroking of the inner child in us will keep us coming back for more. And that's what those who understand how these addictive substances work keep us coming back for more. And then, of course, it's not for our highest good, it's for the highest good of those who would benefit from that financially and in ways that aren't even necessarily material, but just hold power over the human spirit and keep us in line, keep us doing what we're what keeps us predictable. The moment we overcome our addictions, we're no longer predictable. We're no longer so programmable. We become more wild and crazy. I think we talked about this before, being opposites of each other. Crazy is when you are you're in the matrix. You're hypnotized. You are not in touch with the field of life. Wild is when you're no longer crazy. You've been reconnected with the network of life, the SNL, the Supreme Network of Life, not Saturday Night Live, and you're in full contact and in flow with the life force. And that's when you become powerful, and that's when you're no one can wield power over you anymore, because you're in sync with the network of life. The network of life has its own regenerative power, and it wants the best for you, and you feed it, it feeds you. It's that interconnected network of flow, of conductivity. So as the tissue becomes saturated with these substances that are all acidic and they stick in the tissue like glue, the body loses its ability to react. So every cell is a microcosm of the large organism, and as it gets squashed and as it gets saturated, it loses its reactive ability. It doesn't get to intelligently respond. It's now muzzled. It's hushed. It's muted. It's also it's numbed. Okay. And so the experience that most humans are having now is they're being numbed. So, for example, if you're addicted to something and you're on you have this need to reach for it, between your need to reach for it and your consumption of it, you're going to be in a hyper-attentive state because you're desperate for it. But the second you consume it, everything calms down. So that's a kind of numbing. It's numbed you, it's calmed you down. And then in order to get more stimulation from it, you need to have more. So what winds up happening is there's this obviously unconscious experience that the person's having, but they're both looking to numb themselves and stimulate themselves. They want to stimulate themselves out of the experience they're having, and they want to hush the experience they're having. So they want what they're experiencing to be numbed, and then they want to have a new experience on top of that, which they would find favorable, which they would feel like something that would take them into a pleasure zone. So that's why you continuously need more and more and more, because first you need to numb, and then you need to have the pleasure that whatever you perceive the pleasure to be. Every time you override an impulse to consume something that is a stimulant, that is acidic, that is addictive, you become that much stronger over it. So it is never a wasted moment to act in a state of overcoming, in making the effort to take the path of greatest resistance. of saying no, as you put it. And it's not saying no; it's your whole being, your inner voice, your spirit, rejecting that drive to consume it. And I think that the best way to get into an empowered state, to be able to say no, is to recognize that it's not you that wants it. It's not your spirit. It's not your soul. It's not your intelligence. It's not your blueprint that wants it. It's the pathogens that have become so comfortable and happy feeding off of it that want it. It's their food. For you, it's not nourishment. For them, it is. For them, it enables them to proliferate and have bigger colonies and take over and achieve the things that they misguidedly want to do. Yeah. But it undermines you. So if you remember that you're serving them and undermining yourself when you engage in those kinds of substances, when you take them and consume them, and then that will give you a great deal of ammunition against them and for yourself.
So it's good almost to see them as a parasite or like a leech, really.
It's the only way to see them. Vampirical, parasitic, leeching. Anti-energetic is a term I like to use. So there's that which delivers energy, that which conducts energy from the network of life, which is always giving and regenerating. And then there's that which cannot create on its own, so it has to suction and pull the energy off of something that has the life force. And that's what you have happen when you see bullies, basically. They don't have their own internal state of power, or sense of power, so they need to go and take it from somebody else. In any form, whether it's in the schoolyard or it's in the government or it's, in the household, it can happen. In fact, it's funny because this conversation about the empath and the narcissist is so trendy now, and it's basically the way you can think of it is just the anti-energetic force acting on a force of energy that doesn't know how to protect its own boundaries. You're allowing yourself to be bullied. However, having said that, you can create boundaries around what you will and will not do. So, for example, if you know that you want to have this life force quotient of 100%, and your whole day you're doing only things that are life generating, you build up this reserve. So really, you've put in 200%. You've trained hard. You've had so many greens. You've made sure your eliminative organs have done everything they can to excrete everything that's not for you. You know your tissue's alkaline. So you get to 200%. And then, because you know that you want to have that glass of wine, or you want to have that little bit of chocolate, or you want to have that piece of fish. And these things, which are no longer, wine, chocolate, fish, people think that those things are healthy. They're not healthy. They're acidic. Especially the oceans today. The fish that's coming out of those oceans, the fish that's left, it's heartbreaking, but the fish that's left is becoming more and more toxic. So, 20 years ago, you could say, well, maybe a piece of Norwegian salmon from the North Atlantic would be a safe fish to eat. Now, of course, North Atlantic is probably one of the most, dangerous oceans we have. So, but basically, it enables you to be able to indulge in some things that are acidic because you've done so much to secure your alkaline reserve to such a degree that you can afford, you can afford what you can afford. And if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. You go into debt. If you have 200,000 alkaline points and you can spend 50,000, you probably won't want to spend 50,000, but the point is that if you're honest with what your reserves are, and you're honest with what your tissue, the state of your tissue is, and you'll know this because of just looking in the mirror, you'll be able to see the state of the integrity of your face, the clarity of your eyes. If you're needing eye drops, you do not have an alkaline reserve. If you need eye drops to make your eyes clear, you do not have an alkaline reserve. If you have lots of adipose tissue, you don't have an alkaline reserve. If you have any inflammatory symptoms, whether it be rosacea or arthritis or any kind of skin breakout, any itis, everything that's an itis is an inflammation. Okay? If you have anything, you don't have an alkaline reserve, so you can't play around with this stuff. If you're itis free, if you are free of, if you're what's called asymptomatic, without symptoms, then you likely are at least at even. Your alkaline account is full, and you can then make sure it's even over full. You want to be, a trillionaire in alkaline reserve. Yeah, it's actually a physiological thing. It comes down to the voltage in the body. So, and voltage being electromagnetic current. So the fire. We talk about voltage. We talk about fire. The fire you have is so strong that a little bit of these other things is not going to put it out. Every cell in your body is aflame with life force. And so you can take in a little bit of these things that might not be ideal, but that you might really enjoy. And for whatever reason, it's your prerogative. I'm not going to tell a person why they should or shouldn't or what their reasoning would be, but there's this great saying, I may have mentioned this before, but when you can do as I do, you can do as I do. So if this person has such a strong alkaline reserve, it's nobody's business why they might want to take in something and they might want to do something. It's their prerogative. If they're capable of getting away with it, they're capable of getting away with it. That's great for them. So for me, I have little things I like to get away with. My alkaline reserve is so high. But there are emotional things and mental things that can come into play that are, so we're talking physiologically, but there are these other factors that will deplete our alkaline reserve, our physiological alkaline reserve. Having a strong alkaline reserve, having a great abundance of alkalinity in your system is what it means to have a strong alkaline reserve, or a large alkaline reserve, a large bank account of alkalinity. We talk about the Federal Reserve Bank, so this is the reserve. If you have a strong alkaline reserve, you will be asymptomatic, meaning you won't have symptoms. If you do not have a strong alkaline reserve, you will have symptoms. If you have skin issues, rosacea, acne, if you have arthritis, if you have any kind of inflammatory illness in the body, whether it's acute or chronic, whether it's bronchitis or arthritis, one is acute, the bronchitis would be acute, the arthritis would be chronic. If you have any itis, but yeah, if anything that's an itis and is an inflammatory situation, anything that's a symptom basically is going to give you is an indication that you do not have a strong alkaline reserve. So you can't fool around with acidic substances. But the thing is, once you do have a really big alkaline reserve, you don't want to fool around with acidic substances because you're going to lose that amazing feeling that you have, which is a visceral feeling. It's not a hypothetical, theoretical, blah, blah, blah. It's real. You feel the voltage. You feel the fire in your cells. And if anyone were to step into your being for a minute, they would be amazed that that's what the life experience could feel like. It's not an intangible kind of theoretical thing. It is real. It is so amazing. It's a feeling that most people, if they're lucky, they had it as children, and when their body goes back into that zone, they'll remember it, and they'll be like, oh my God, I remember I used to feel this way. How did I forget that, But a lot of people now, because children are raised with formula and, all this junk food from, day one, they actually never even get that feeling that every child should have. So they don't even know what life should actually feel like. But once you clean the tissues like this, and the fire's running through the cells, the life force is in you, you don't want it to be put out. You protect it, you defend it, you become the idea of being so sovereign over your space. It's non-negotiable. And the beauty of having so much fire in the body is that if you do over-acidify and you have a strong alkaline reserve, the body very, very quickly kicks it out. You might feel miserable for a short time, but it will be a short time and you'll be back if you do the right things to get yourself back on track. You'll feel it when the waste matter leaves the body. So it's not about how long you spend trying to get it right. It's about getting it right in a really short time. It's kind of like, if you're talking to a businessman, then you would say, well, all right, so you've got all these board members. The boardroom is full. we need a solution, and we need a solution now. And the best person at that table is the one who's going to be able to come up with the best solution the most expediently, the most expediently. So, so you might have all these bright minds sitting around the table, but if they're mulling over, what a good option would be, and yet you've got this, this crackerjack young kid who's just arrived and says, well, here's the solution. Well, that crackerjack young kid, you know what that is? That's a colonic. And the second you get that activated, you get the waste out, then it's going to be like, oh, whoa. And you know that people know this because everybody knows, without being too gruesome, what it feels like to have a great elimination. And that smile that comes out, it's undeniable. It's like, okay, so maybe there's like an orgasm and a great elimination. and people always smile when you mention those things because, yeah, we all know the feeling, right? So take that and multiply that by 1,000. And the degree to which you remove the obstruction is the degree to which you're going to feel that life force flowing through you, because the only thing that's blocking it is that impacted saturation in the tissue. So it's not about how long you go, but how effectively you remove the waste matter. And if one is empowered enough to do what one is called to do and not fall into the trap of all the fear-mongering and everything around it, or the, oh, well, that's so improper, and that doesn't sound like something, I was raised to do, and, my friends don't do that, and isn't that a bit unusual? I mean, really now, if you can get over all those things and just say, you know what, cleaning myself out, that sounds true. I clean my dishes, I clean my teeth, I clean my sink, I clean my sheets, I wash my clothes. Why wouldn't I clean my internal tissues? When I say, I talk about tissue cleansing with my kids when they were little, and the little one who's still little, the first time they heard the term tissue cleansing, they'd be like, what do you mean you clean your tissues? Because they're thinking about tissues like you blow your nose with a tissue. Yes, mommy teaches people how to clean their tissues. But this is the fabric of your being. You're cleaning the fabrics you put on your being. Why wouldn't you clean the fabric of your being, especially when it's these substances that we're taking in today, we've been taking in for the last couple hundred years really, but even more horrifically today. They never belonged in the body to begin with. The body doesn't know what to do with them. So people will say, oh, well, I've been to my doctor. My doctor says that the body just eliminates what it doesn't need on its own. This sort of artificial irrigation is completely unnecessary. Well, that's a fallacy. That's completely erroneous, because the body cannot eliminate what it was never designed to take in, assimilate, and eliminate. So if it can't, and it's stuck, and it needs help, then why wouldn't you help it? And with such an easy thing as just water, everything else gets irrigated. The gardens get irrigated. It seems like everything but our bodies get the attention that they need in the right way. So going to gym and making protein shakes and eating power bars, these things are not going to care for your body. Going to the gym, if you are training properly and your tissues are clean, that's fabulous. But keep the power bars and the protein shakes out of the picture. The problem is that we're living in a world that has turned everything upside down. Every directive that we're given is wrong, and it's just absolutely categorical. You take any common directive, anything that's commonly accepted as the way to do things, whether it's how to eat, how to care for ourselves, how to educate our kids, how to determine our career, what to do with our day, what to watch on television, what to listen to, what books to read, how to treat our fellow man. All the societal rules and directives are wrong. They all are antithetical to the life force. They all act in opposition to the network of life, and therefore they're wrong. So they deplete us, they tear us apart, they create obstruction, they make us sad, they make us sick, they make us feel lonely, they make us miserable. The statistics for suicide are up. Suicide has increased by 300% since 1990, I think it is. Maybe, no, since 2000, I believe, even worse. Wow. Since 2000, it's increased by 300%. That tells us something. That literally is opposition to life. That is literally life defeating. It's if our ability to just feel simple joy of being alive is gone. And those people who have not maybe taken their own lives completely are walking around thinking about it, are walking around taking substances to try to dull the pain and increase the pleasure somehow. The pleasure should not have to come externally. But if you tell somebody this without them having experienced it, they won't really believe you because it seems so far-fetched, it seems unbelievable. But, I speak as somebody who's been there, who knows, and I've been on both sides. I've been suicidal, and I can speak from that perspective, and it is horrible. And you feel that there is no other choice, there is no other way. And then you change everything. You change everything. First of all, there's not a day that goes by where I don't look around and think, how do people survive? How do they cope? Because life is so hard. Let me modify that. Life in this culture, what we're told is life, and the way we define life is so hard. But actual living life, like life that is alive. So there's the sort of, let's say that society's life, our cultural life, is anti-life, because it really is. And you watch people suffer. I watch people suffer every day. It's so hard to see, but I don't, for the most part, I don't deflect my sight from it, because I feel like the only reason I'm here and the only purpose I have, short of maybe raising my kids and stuff, is to, in some way, help the condition. When I was in school, I was really compelled by this concept of the human condition. And the way I understood it in those days, when I was, I suppose, in high school, but long story short, I was compelled by the idea of this concept of the human condition. And it was as if it was a foregone conclusion that this is the human condition. By nature of being a human, this is how we suffer. These are the things we'll deal with in our families. These are the things we'll be dissatisfied with. Life will be dissatisfying. We'll look for joy in places and won't find it. And this is the foregone conclusion of what it means to be human. And I look back on that now and I think, actually, that's ridiculous. That's the cultured human condition. Cultured, actually, is meaning having multiple entendres there. But the human condition, if it's in the petri dish of life, real life is wondrous, is unlimited. We're, our vascular network, our bronchial networks, the trees, the veins of the root systems in the trees, the extension of what's like antennae that come out from the branches. Everything in life is vascular. It's outreaching, it's connecting, it's conducting. And if we think about, even if we, our brains, our neural networks, all of it is in the same pattern, these fractals of venous carriers of energy, channels of energy. So if we could only see how those vascular channels are exploding out of us, connecting with everything around us in the natural world, and how much force, life force there is, and how much the force would be with us if we followed that network, if we followed that yellow brick road home, we would be so powerful, we would be so happy, we would be so satisfied, and we would be one. We wouldn't be in this very limited individuated consciousness. We would be in unity consciousness. And all of these things that plague us would not be an issue. So the human condition in the network of life is a completely different thing to the human condition that's portrayed in books and dramatized in theater. And it's, of course, it's interesting to watch these things and see how they mirror our state of mind, but that can also be what creates a lot of limitations and conditions us to believe that that's the true human condition. So we're just in this very, very deep entrapment of understanding. It's a kind of a deep, deep ignorance, a blindness, a dark, in this very, very dark space. And the second we start to recognize that is it's probably been deliberately limiting us, but whatever the case, we're limited by it, and we start to cast it off, and we start to shed it, and see that that's all the things that we're doing are just because we're told to do them, and because when we're so young, when we're in our first 7 years of life, we're in this theta state. In our first 2 years of life, we're more even delta state, where we're just like pretty much asleep. But theta is when you're like in hypnosis, and you're just receiving, and you're a sponge, and that's a good thing, because it in the right environment, it's a good thing, because it enables us taking so much information in such a short amount of time, so that we're ready to be able to engage, interface with the world that we're in, as when we're older. But all that time spent absorbing the wrong things and saturating us, and we don't even know. So the saturation of the tissues is mirrored by the saturation of the mental and emotional and energetic fields, which are just soaking up in those early years of life an antithetical system, an antithetical belief system, an antithetical way of living and seeing and engaging. So antithetical to life, to real life, to the network of life. So we just believe it, and we don't really understand. We don't know. When was that moment when we went from being conscious to not being? But wait a minute, we were too young to even have the choice, and that's heartbreaking. It's like it sets the mold before we even decide what mold we want to be set into, or to be mold free. We all prefer mold free when we get into the network of life. Mold, fungus, we don't want it.